Disclaimer, I want to say that these the whatever content I have framed in my PPT, all these are not my sole contribution. Some are from my published paper, and some I have taken directly from URL. So due credit is given to the gentleman or to the researcher those have framed this particular diagrams. So if you see, it's a kind of a very complex diagram. It looks like, if you see it, where multiple activities are performing or multiple activities are simultaneously at the same time are executed. If you see, we have the washing machine available. If you see my cursor, okay, we have the payment system available. We have the electric vehicles available. So we need a kind of a charging station. We have the smart home available. Okay, so that means if we see in our surroundings, we have the IoT available everywhere. If we see very carefully our surroundings, then IoT plays an important role. Let's say I'm moving from my let's say I'm just take an example. I want to go from my home to my university or ABS. If I take an example, then and I commute by my own vehicle. I have a four-wheeler. Okay. So inside the four-wheeler, if you see nowadays, many sensors are there. Okay, so this is nothing. These all are the examples of the IoT based applications where these devices plays an important role. And I again repeat, the main thing is how much dedicated connectivity you are having in terms of the speed, or in terms of taking the and then after that highlighting the role of the IoT. I'm going to discuss about the machine learning, and then come to the security, and then come to the blockchain. Okay, now moving further. So now if you see, there are more connected devices are available than the people. How can you justify this particular statement? So there is one report from Cisco. If you refer this particular report, then you itself, your query are solved, and you get the answer of your queries in terms of what there are nowadays. If you compare 2020, and if I want to say over a period of next 5 year, or over a period of next 10 year, what will be the future of the IoT professionals, or what will be the future of electronics and communication engineers or computer engineer. So nowadays, if you see, it's a kind of a multidisciplinary approach where we cannot solely focus on one discipline itself, but we need to frame out a kind of a team where we have some professional available from computer domain, we have some professional available from the mechanical background to perform some kind of automotive operations. We have in our team some kind of members from the electronics and communication engineering background. They can play with the hardware. So if you compare, we will what I need to convey to you people from this particular slide, more connected devices than people. If you see over the x-axis, if you see, we have the years. So in the 2003, we were having the world population is 6.3 billion, and the number of connected devices are 500 millions. And if you see now at present in 2020, so in 2020 we are having the world population is 7.6 billion, and the connected number of connected devices we are having 50 billion. So if we are having the world population 7.6 billion and the number of connected devices are 50 billion, so if we need to calculate it, it comes to be nearly 6.5 per person. If you want to calculate, that means one person itself is having 6.5 connected devices with them. Okay, so that means if you compare now you have mobile phone available, you have your laptop available, you have your car available, you have your two-wheeler available, you have your smartwatch available. Okay, and other, you have your PDA available in your home. Your kids are having smart toys. Okay, so if you compare, this number is going to be increased if we see the projection. If we projected it by taking a span of, let's say, next 5 year or next 10 year. So now my bigger concern is how to handle this particular situation, where in this particular environment we are having more connected devices than the people. So if we are having more connected devices than the people, then there comes to be a big question mark, or a kind of a research question, that these smart devices or these connected devices generates a huge amount of data. So, or we can say this data is ever evolving data. So now how to handle this particular situation now comes to the role of the data analytics, that which data is important for me, which data is not important for me. So we are not going into the detail of it. Otherwise, it's a kind of a different type of speech related to the big data analytics, where the Hadoop and all these frameworks comes into the picture. Now, coming to our main discussion related to IoT. So now I put a question mark here for all of you, that if we are having a kind of a this situation keeps on increasing with a multiplying factor of let's say, for example, if we consider 2015 and 20 with a multiplying factor of 2, and I believe that now if we consider 20 and 25, then it will go with a multiplying factor of not less than 4. Okay, so it ranges from 3 to 4. So now see how the situation is complex. Everything is connected. Every device is generating data. So now the next part is how this IoT is going to be transformed. Let's say, for example, if someone asks you that you tell me that what exactly the transformation in the IoT related technologies over a period of time. So this particular slide will give you a crystal clear idea that over a period of time, how the Internet of Things related technologies have changing their shape, starting from, if I talk about in terms of starting from 2007, if I want to plot a graph, and over this graph, if I put x-axis as the years, and over the y-axis, if I say sensors per year, number of sensors per year, so we can see this is a kind of a trillion sensor vision, where we have a different kind of predictions from the Bosch or from the Qualcomm or from different predicting agencies or Intel. So ultimately, sole objective, what I want to convey to you people is, if you consider a small fragment of the year, we can say months, or if you consider a quarter, then the month, then it comes to day, then it comes to hours, and then it comes to minute, and then it comes to second. Then you are going to surprise to see that this is a kind of a ever evolving data, and this expected growth in the number of connected devices, if you consider what are the different causes and what are the different segmented connected data, connected devices are available. So this list is very long, but for your understanding purpose, I have selected only few. So we can see very clearly here that machine-to-machine communication nowadays plays an important role. So most of the data for these connected devices are using the machine-to-machine communication. That means there is no human intervention is going to be involved, and your 5G and all these are using a kind of a machine-to-machine communication. And another one is the tablets, the PCs, and your laptop or your desktop or mobile handsets. So ultimately, what I need to convey to you people, that if you have a more number of connected devices over a period of year, then how to handle it? This is going to be a big challenge for all of us. Now, moving further, now we will discuss that what exactly the roadmap of the IoT in a technological shifting paradigm wise approach. If we follow this particular approach, and in 2000, if I consider this Internet of Thing area, then in that particular case, you remember very keenly that RFID technologies comes into the picture, where every item we have given a RFID tag, and through that particular RFID tag, that particular item is going to be identified. And nowadays we call this item as a thing or a connected object, whether it's a kind of a washing machine, whether it's a kind of a another categories of object, whether you apply that particular object in a automatic industries or automation processes, or whatever application you want to use. Now, if we move from 2000 to 2010, then the main role comes to the supply chain, how we have the devices available. Now, what to do in terms of the supply chain, how to handle the supply chain efficiently and more accurately with the help of the helpers. So next, the cost reduction comes into the picture. So this is a kind of a second wave of application we will consider it, where the surveillance systems or your security, healthcare, transport, food safety, these all comes into the picture in case of 2010. Now, if we see in case of 2020 or in the present era, then it's a kind of a vertical market applications, or we can say it's a kind of a ubiquitous positioning where we are not restricted to a particular vendor, to a particular segment or particular area. The market is more competitive, and it gives the flexibility to all the end user to use these opportunities and come up with a new findings and come up with a new proposals and new terms discounted in terms of the from the client perspective side, because ultimately when you are having more competitors in the market, then only the customer will get a kind of a benefit in terms of the service capabilities from that particular company, or in terms of the revenue, if we talk about in terms of the company, and many more. So that means that this is a kind of a technology roadmap if we consider the Internet of Things. Now moving further, so here in the couple of few slides, I am going to discuss about what inside the IoT we are having. Okay, because I have kept these slides very simple. It's not a kind of a theoretical context. I will highlight and try to correlate it with some of the applications when we are going to discuss some use cases. So now we can say that in our world or in the present context, IoT is a kind of a digital nervous system. Then how you are going to correlate this a kind of a, why I am calling this IoT as a digital nervous system? Because if you see the from the anatomy perspective, in a nervous system we are having different nerves that are coming from different part of your body. Okay, so similar in that particular case, if you consider sensors and actuators, then we can say that this IoT in the present context is a digital nervous system. So where in this digital nervous system, let's say you have open your navigation. Okay, so so anyone can visit your home. Let's say, for example, I am just taking example. So the time passes, you do not need to tell or text your address. You just share your location, and the person, without asking from anybody else in the road, directly approach to your society or to your flat and directly ring that, hey, hey, you are so and so. So that means this is the role of the technology, how the technology is changing. So we can say it's a kind of a digital nervous system where we have the location data using the sensors, and your eyes and your ears using cameras and microphones respectively. And along with that, with sensory organs that can be used to measure everything from temperature to the change to temperature to or other physical parameters of your body, if you are using a kind of a healthcare electronic gadget. So what I need to convey to you people, if you refer this particular slide, think beyond your imagination when you think related to the Internet of Things. Okay, forget about you belongs to computer science department, you belongs to mechanical department. Don't restrict yourself with limit to your department only. Think beyond your imagination and place what is your role in this particular identified definition, and how the other guy belongs to from the other department is going to help you in that particular context, and then try to integrate and formalize your own problem related to having some kind of societal context in your problem. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you want to if your Ghaziabad Municipal Corporation want to measure the some kind of leakage level in the public water transferring system. So in this particular case, they can use the sensors where sensor itself are capable. You have seen these examples in your society also. So now the time passes, every tank, water tank is, we can install the sensors where the sensor itself give a kind of alarm. If your particular tank is, you have set the threshold and reaching to the limit of the threshold. So these are some of the real-time examples where you can see that how IoT playing a crucial role in everyday's life and changing our lives. Okay, I'm not going to discuss in detail about these because all these are different areas where we can apply IoT, but I will discuss some of the application in detail while moving further. Now, second aspects that I need to highlight related to the IoT is the connectivity, because as I have already highlighted here, if you have, let's say, in your house 5 devices, okay, and these 5 devices are not connected to the network, whether your network is a kind of a Wi-Fi network or kind of a Bluetooth network or kind of a Zigbee, so whatever, or 6LoWPAN, whatever you want to use. Okay, so then there is no meaning of having these devices, because individually, these devices are capable to monitor the individual segment for which they are intended. But if you want to take the more benefit from these devices, then definitely you have to provide a kind of a connectivity where the connectivity itself is highly required. And let's say, for example, if I consider one example, if healthcare is your selected application, okay, and one patient is admitted in the ICU, and where this connectivity or any kind of delay in processing the information is directly proportional to the death of that particular patient, then in that particular identified environment, you cannot take the risk of having a kind of a question mark on the connectivity side. Okay, so this is a kind of a graph, or you can say a kind of a visualization how the connectivities plays an important role, because ultimately whatever inputs in from these digitized devices we are having, we need to place them all together into onto the network, because ultimately we need to take some benefits from these devices. Okay, so nowadays, moving further, the third aspects that I need to highlight is the end users, or we can call it as as a layman language, the people and the processes. So we have the sensors available, we have the devices available, we have provided a kind of, or framed out a kind of a network of all these devices, smart devices. Now the next comes how these network of smart devices can be combined in a bidirectional system. What exactly a bidirectional system? It is not like that you interact with the device and device is also interacting with you without any kind of human intervention. So this kind of environment, we can call it as a machine to machine communication, and very popular nowadays. Okay, where you don't require any kind of human intervention, where one machine can automatically converse in terms of some kind of message passing structure or some kind of different way of communication, but definitely they have to communicate with each other without any kind of human intervention. Only they need a kind of a connectivity. If the connectivity is not an issue in your network or in your identified application, then this is not a big deal. Okay, so now the next task is, for what purpose we need this kind of bidirectional system. So number one is, we need to integrate the data, whatever data is going to be generated from all these network of devices. Number two, we need to disseminate that particular data among the peers or among all the stakeholders, those are involved in your selected application. And we need to process that particular data, and ultimately for what purpose? In order to take the appropriate decision. So it's a kind of a life cycle of big data, we can say, where we have collected data, we have to pre-process that data, we have to, so there are different algorithms, different techniques are available, how to pre-process the data, how to after pre-processing the data, how to get the insight from the data, and what are the different ways available to get the insights from that particular data. Okay, so now ultimately in this particular slide, what I need to convey to final takeaway for you is, ultimately we need a kind of a bidirectional system. So unless and until we are having a bidirectional system, that particular system in a unidirectional is not going to solve our purpose. Now moving further, now up to this particular instant, I give you a flavor related to the what exactly the meaning of IoT by some kind of visualization, basically. Okay, so now ultimately what are the, you can say, characteristics of the IoT? So there are different characteristics. We cannot limit the characteristics of IoT, but for your understanding, I have selected and kept only few important characteristics of the IoT. But again, there is a big question mark on this important characteristics. How will you specify this characteristic is important or not? So if you want to select this, if you want to get the answer of this question, then your answer is lies within the application where you want to deploy it. Okay, So that means it depends, it vary from user to user, it vary from application to application, it vary from environment to environment also sometimes. Okay. So the first characteristic of IoT is the event driven. So what exactly the meaning of event driven? It's a kind of a, let's say for example, I come back to my previous example where you have deployed you have used some IoT enabled smart healthcare gadgets in a intensive care unit. Okay, where one patient is a accidental case patient is admitted. Now you need to measure the different parameters of these particular patient. Now you have to set the threshold that you need the BP up to what extent, you need the pulses up to what percent, you need the heartbeat up to what percent. Okay, so ultimately when it reaches to threshold, and if it crosses the threshold, it reaches to the threshold, in between that it gives a kind of alarm to the doctor or to the paramedical staff, hey, this particular patient is in a critical condition and he need your urgent advice. So that's the way we can say that this is a kind of a event driven environment where ambient assisted living, or we can call it as a ambient intelligence. What exactly the meaning of this ambient intelligence and why these characteristics plays an important role? You have remembered, I think, in the literature there is one word that we can call it as a ambient assisted living, AAL. So what exactly the meaning of ambient assisted living? So nowadays, if we consider the healthcare environment, so in the healthcare 4.0, the present era of healthcare, some people or some researcher call it as a healthcare 5.0 also. So in this particular era, we are in the era of healthcare 4.0 or 5.0, where we can say that it's not the doctor centric, it's the patient centric basically. So how much flexibility your system is providing to the patient, that patient do not need to visit to the doctor. So it's a kind of a telemedicine over a remote distance. Let's say one patient is living at a terrain area where the approach road is not there, connectivity is there is no problem at all with respect to the connectivity. So in this particular environment, if you want to refer this particular environment and provide the services to that particular patient, so this particular environment we can call it as an ambient assisted environment, or the ambient assisted learning, or sometime in the literature ambient intelligence. Okay, now moving further, the third characteristic is the heterogeneity. So heterogeneity means what? Because these devices generates a massive amount of data. Some sensor will give the reading in a different format, some sensor will give the reading in a different format, but you need to frame out a kind of a network. So now this task you can give to your BTech student also, because if your BTech student also take 10 sensors and try to frame out a kind of a environment and deploy these 10 sensors and measure the readings from these 10 sensors, let's say after half an hour, collect the data of 1 month. Okay, and it's a huge data, not so huge, but it's a appropriate data to do some kind of analytics, and then come up with your analysis that this data is generated from sensor ID number 1 is having this particular frame, and sensor 2 ID is having this particular frame. Now if you want to consolidate all these data, then the roles comes with the database management system. How will you design the database for this particular, how will you maintain? So this is, we can call it as a heterogeneity, how we are going to handle the heterogeneity in terms of different aspects. I will tell, I have highlighted only one, but the examples are many examples and many verticals are there. Okay, now how to next characteristic is the massive scale up deployment. That means scalability, it is with respect to the scalability. That means because the number of devices are keeps on increasing, so if the number of devices are keeps on increasing, then definitely how much flexibility is available in your system or in your identified application with respect to the scalability and interconnectivity. Let's say you want to integrate 3 different networks all together and framed out a particular environment. Now how these different environment interact with each other and what time zone they are using. So this is again one of the important characteristics. As a researcher, we need to find out the solution for that. Now the next one is an important one, is the ultra reliable low latency communication. So nowadays, those who are familiar with the 5G or the services provided by the 5G. So 5G is providing basically three services. I can say MMTC, massive type communication, MMTC, and URLCC. So I'm going to discuss about this URLCC by taking one example. So it means that we nowadays we need the from the end user perspective, the end user need 99.9% accuracy in the data. Number one, or we can say 99.9% availability of data. Number one. Number two, 99.9%, or we can say low latency. Latency in terms of what? Latency, let's say less than 1 millisecond. So this flexibility is available in your identified network. So it's a kind of a challenge for the researcher that how will you minimize the latency? Let's say your latency should be, if I say that less than 10 millisecond, or let's say I say that less than 1 millisecond. Okay. And 99.9% your data is available. So if your application is like that, then for that you need to go for the 5G, or sometime it's a kind of a hype that 6G comes into the picture also, because in Finland, University of Finland is a kind of a motivator or kind of inventor for 6G for in the whole Europe. Okay, so Professor Tariq Talab is a kind of a guy who is responsible for managing all these services in the entire Europe with respect to the 6G. So University of Finland, if you want to refer more related to that, so because more opportunities are available if you want to work in this particular characteristic, because ultimately the sole objective of from any researcher is how much efficiently your data is available, 99.9%, that means all the time, and how efficiently, or that means we can say that how much latency, or we can say in terms of delay, your data is going to provide. Okay, so from rest I'm not going to discuss in detail. And most important one is the security and privacy. It is also one of the important characteristics of IoT application. I'm just taking a very simple example. Let's say, for example, you want to your selected application is healthcare. Okay, and as a patient, I do not want to disclose my telephone number, my disease, or my information related to my disease, or my history, my telephone number, my address. For what purpose I want to give that data to you? Okay, so that means it comes to the part of the privacy, that how your system is efficiently provide the privacy to the selected application, and at the same time how your data is secure. That means at the same time, let's say your data is because here from this particular characteristics I will correlate it with the blockchain when I discuss the blockchain technology in detail. So now moving further. So now I'm going to discuss some of the applications. Okay, some of the applications related to IoT. So the first one is the smart home. So I have kept a kind of a virtualization which will give you a kind of a feeling that if you want to apply the Internet of Thing in a smart home, then how your smart home is built up using the Internet of Thing. So now, if you want to make a kind of a smart home, okay. So now this flexibility is available in the packet tracer also. Okay. So most of you are familiar with the packet tracer, because we are normally using the packet tracer in order to perform some kind of computer network practicals. But recently the packet tracer inventor come up with a kind of a entire environment to perform the IoT experiment, where they give the virtual kind of hardwares for you, and you can just drag and drop, deploy them, and have a kind of a feeling that how the LED glow, and how your press or your washing machine, different smart devices are available. So now I advise all of you, please refer this packet tracer. Okay, and create a kind of a smart home, and use the different aspects of the smart home, or different appliances in the smart home, and calculate the load. Those who want to do some kind of analytics on the load, if you are very much familiar with the smart grid. Now the second application is the smart grid. So in case of smart grid, it's a kind of, let's say we normally in earlier days we are having the traditional grid. So in what are the drawbacks of the traditional grid? we don't know how much energy is going to be used as a kind of input and how much is going to be used as a kind of output. And there are certain losses are there in case of transmission also. So certainly the smart grid concept comes into the picture. So ultimately, in case of smart grid, it's a kind of a win-win situation for both the prosumer, consumers, and other stakeholders. You can buy the electricity, you can sell the electricity also at the same time, but it contains if you want to deploy the smart meter, smart meter inside the houses of the smart home, then smart meter itself taking the data and automatically pass it to the grid, and grid passes it to the server, and ultimately the server itself do a kind of analytic that in this particular area we have invested this much amount, and as a revenue model we get this much amount, then they do a kind of a comparison. Okay, so this will help the utility companies also in order to reduce their losses, or in order to reduce, or we can say do a kind of a 420 business that the people are doing in case of the normal electricity distribution mechanism. And the third application where you can deploy the IoT is the smart healthcare. So in case of smart healthcare, the bigger scope is available for you. Let's say, for example, I'm just taking an example, and you want to store the data, okay, related to the patient, which contains your patient ID, patient name, patient history, patient previous diseases. So in India, that particular system, we can call it as a personal healthcare record system, but in developed country, they can call it as a electronic healthcare record system. Okay, so in order to gather that particular data, you can use the electronic gadgets. Okay, so IoT is a bigger segment, or we can say a technology changer in that particular area with respect to the selected application. If I consider the application as healthcare, now another one is the smart industry. So if you refer the smart industry, nowadays the digital twin concept comes into the picture. What exactly the meaning of digital twin? Where ultimately what is the burden on the industry side? The burden on the industry side is once they manufacture a product and that product comes into the market, and then the end user will give the feedback related to the working capabilities of that particular product, then it is not feasible for the company to entirely change the or incorporate all the suggestions of the stakeholders. Okay, partially over a period of time they can look at these aspects. So this is a kind of a problem for the from the industry point of view if we consider the industry 4.0. Now the next concept comes here is the digital twin. So what exactly the meaning of digital twin? Here, if you use the Internet of Things, so digital twin will create a kind of a replica of the entire product, and in phases it will be delivered, and ultimately in a virtualization form it will give you a kind of a feeling that how your product look like, what are the different functionalities associated with your product. So ultimately, in parallel to the development of this particular product and come up or releasing that particular product in the market, you take the feedback and incorporate that particular feedback. This will save the multiple purpose of the end users also, and the industry perspective also. From the industry perspective, number one, it will increase the lifetime of that particular product. Number two, it is a good kind of revenue model for the organization itself. And from the end user perspective, if you think, it gives a flexibility for the end user to use that particular product because they have the because it has already passed the different phases. Okay, so these are different aspects that are to be used in the smart industry environment. Another and last application is the just a minute. Another and last application is the smart agriculture. And in 2000, I think, if I'm not wrong, in 2015 or 16, we come up with a working prototype and published a paper. That prototype we call it as a PI cloud. Okay, where this is a kind of a problem. And if you want to refer it more, then refer our paper PI cloud. That paper was published in IEEE, okay, and I don't remember the exact year. I think it's 2015 or 16. So in that particular paper, we have deployed a kind of a, we took the help of some faculties of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel University of Meerut, and where we deployed some sensors in order to measure the humidity. Okay, so it's just like that you have a tulsi plant at your home and you have a money plant at your home, and daily it's a kind of a habit that you take one glass of water or one mug of water and then just give it to the plant, irrespective of it, to know that the fact that whether the plant need today water or not. So there is no mechanism to measure it. So for that particular purpose, we have deployed a kind of a sensors, humidity sensors and different other categories of sensor, and measure certain parameters. And depending upon the certain parameters and taking the help of the agriculture scientists from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel University, we come up with a solution that if this value reaches to beyond that particular threshold, although that these threshold we have set defined by the IARI PUSA Delhi, according to their guidelines, we have set these threshold, and then ultimately it is a kind of a very good innovation or very good project where the plant itself virtually tell you that whether I need the water or not today. So it will save two purpose. It will improve the productivity in terms of the plant, and it will save the water also. So if you want to refer it more, then in Kerala, many agriculture or many pharmacists are using this particular technology, where they many farmers are using this technology, where they use this particular technology for grape farms. Okay, so they use this particular technology for their grape farms, and this will improve their productivity of grapes in terms of revenue model, if we consider, and it will save the time also. So moving further, another application is the smart city that I am not going to discuss because this is a very big application. We cannot quantify the entire segment of IoT in the smart city, but I will highlight one or two aspects. So let's say, for example, nowadays in India also slightly from the 2021, we are heading towards the electric vehicles. So instead, these petrol pumps will remain there, but instead of that, we are having in the very soon in the future, we are having the electric vehicles charging stations where the you can sell the energy, you can charge your vehicles. If your vehicle is fully charged, then you can sell the energy, or if your vehicle is not charged, you can take the energy. So this is a kind of a trade-off situation that and some game theoretic approach will come into picture here. So now moving further, so I'm going to highlight some aspects of the smart healthcare because we have already carried out good work in the area of smart healthcare by selecting some disease or in journal with respect to blockchain technology, and by finding the ways how these machine learning plays an important role in order to countermeasure the different aspects related to the security point of view. So this diagram we have prepared by our own, and we have published a paper related to that particular case study. That case study was framed by one of my MTech student, Jigna Hetelia. So that paper was published in Computer Communication, very recent paper, 2020. So in this particular paper, let's say we are having the two category of patient, the outdoor or indoor. This is in this particular diagram, what I need to convey to you people, this is a traditional way of healthcare. Okay, this is not the smart way of healthcare, or we cannot call it as a smart healthcare. Partially, we can say it's a smart healthcare. I will tell you why I'm saying partially. So we have different IoT sensors, and these IoT sensors are responsible to measure some physical parameters of your body. Okay, and then we have the emergency contact of the patient, and with that particular wireless connectivity or wired connectivity, but we cannot go with the wired in this particular environment. So with the wireless connectivity, we have the emergency contact of the patient available, and we have the hospital and the ambulance and the pharmacy the contacts in our database. So depending upon the threshold value set by us, we have a kind of a it gives a kind of a alert to the different stakeholders in terms of hospital, in terms of paramedical staff, doctor, in terms of ambulance, in terms of pharmacy. Okay, and but the main objective is we need to have a dedicated, we need to have a connectivity. Okay, so this is a smart healthcare, partially smart healthcare environment. Why I saying partially? Because here we have not considered the aspects of security and privacy. Let's say, for example, if this particular patient do not want to reveal his or her identity, so in this particular architecture, we don't have this kind of flexibility. So now, in this paper, we have proposed a blockchain-based based security based smart healthcare ecosystem, which is responsible to provide the security and privacy. So let's say, for example, again, we have changed. I am going to try to correlate this particular diagram by correlating it so that thing becomes easy for you. So now, if you see, we have measured the different parameters, and then altogether we have a kind of a POG application server where we have to, because ultimately we have to fetch the data, whatever data is we have stored on the server. So there are two ways: either we have to use the centralized approach or decentralized approach. So centralized approach has their own pros and cons. So problems in terms of what? In terms of the main point of contact failure, central controller fails, or a kind of a network connectivity issue. But when we go with the decentralized approach, instead of centralized approach, then instead of single point of contact, we are having the multiple point of contact. So in our network, if we are having multiple point of contact, then things becomes easy for us. So this statement, whatever I have said to you, these all are motivation for using the blockchain technology. Okay, so in this particular blockchain technology, what we are having, now I will tell you what in the blockchain technology we are having. So in case of blockchain technology, data once captured by different sensors are all together placed on the blockchain, which is a kind of a peer-to-peer ledger. And this peer-to-peer ledger because it's a multi-party environment, so we have framed out the smart contract among the different stakeholders in order to resolve their conflicts, because resolving the conflicts plays an important role here. Then the validation algorithm we have applied, verification algorithm we have applied, and directly it's that particular transaction is completed. And what exactly the meaning of transaction here? Let's say, for example, any patient want to access the data. Okay, so that we can consider as a transaction. Now moving further, so finally, what are the challenges of IoT? So in terms of security aspects, so now we can categorize these challenges in different aspects related to the security. We can say that still we are having the unsecured devices, and still there are some chances, and this happen practically. Listen it very carefully. It happen practically sometimes after the authentication process is over. After the authentication process is over, some nodes or some users started behaving maliciously. Then what to do for that particular user if the user started behaving maliciously and your authentication process is over? And it's up to you. If you want to use the Kerberos, you want to use the Iris-based authentication, you want to use the digital signature, or whatever medium you want to use for the authentication purpose. If that process is over, and still the user started behaving maliciously, then how to handle this particular environment? It's a very tedious activity. So that in the blockchain network, we can call it as a Byzantine failure that we will discuss later. So now I'm just trying to correlate it. Another challenge is with respect to the network. So what are the challenges with respect to the network? Number one is the scalability, diversity of the different peers, and because the interface is open. So if the network interface is open, then it itself create a kind of a challenge. And sometimes these devices are low power communication devices. So energy is also one of the challenge here. So these are the altogether in nutshell are the challenges with respect to the security. Now the next one is, so this is one part related to the IoT that so far I have discussed. Now in this particular segment, the AI, ML and DL, I am not going to discuss in detail in more. Why? Because the fundamental part I believe that the previous speakers have already covered. So I will just quick scan it for your understanding that this diagram is very familiar to all of you. So here in this particular diagram, if you see, this artificial intelligence is a kind of a technique which enables the machines for what purpose? In order to mimic the human behavior. And at the same time, if we see the machine learning, So we can consider this machine learning as a subset of artificial intelligence, which for what purpose I can say it's a subset of artificial intelligence, because it uses some kind of statistical methods. For what purpose it uses some statistical method? Because this statistical method enables the machines to improve their experience, or that means to improve the accuracy of prediction. Okay, so that means machine learning is a more refined version, or we can say the subset of artificial intelligence. Now comes to the deep learning. So deep learning, again, if you refer this particular diagram, we can say it's a subset of machine learning, but which makes the computation of multi-layer neural network feasible. That means we have to get a kind of a multi-layer architecture here, where we can combine the classification and some kind of feature extraction all together at the same time. Now, moving further, there are many differences between the machine learning and deep learning. I will tell you in a simple way. Other speakers might have already discussed about it, so I'm not going to discuss more. So if you take an input as an object, let's say you take input as a car, and if I want to apply any of the machine learning algorithm, then it will first extract the feature. So that means if you have a data set, you need to extract the feature from your data set, and then you need to apply some classification algorithms in order to classify that particular features. And after that, this will give you the output whether this particular object which you have identified here and fed this as an input to this entire machine learning algorithm, which can be bifurcated into feature extraction and classification. It will give you an output whether it's a car or not. So if at the same time, if I compare it with the deep learning and giving one object, and let's say I'm just taking an example, this object is car. So if I need to compare it, I need to fed it with the deep learning algorithm. Then in deep learning, because I have already told you, the sole objective is we need to make the computation of multi-layer neural networks feasibility here. So here the feature extraction and classification all together combine, and ultimately this output will tell you whether it's a car or not a car, or irrespective of the car, any particular object for that you need to identify. Okay, so this is very familiar slide for all of you, and I think the previous speaker has already talked about the unsupervised learning, supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. I'm going to discuss more about this reinforcement learning. So in case of hello, any
Hello.
question? Yes, yes. Hello. Shall I continue? Hello. Someone has unmute. Shall I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can continue, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm just giving you some crux of this supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Let's say, for example, if we fed the input raw data and in the form of some picture, or let's say apple. So in case of supervised learning, we have a training data set, and the supervisor itself trained, and we have to get a desired output. Is already, we know that what should be the desired output, and this algorithm runs, which is supervised category algorithm, and then we pre-process that. So processing need to be take care, and ultimately the outcome of the processing is we have a kind of a trained model, and where we fed the input as an apple. So ultimately we are getting it's an apple. So that means if we compare the supervised with the unsupervised, so in case of unsupervised learning, the first thing is the output, we don't know what should be the output. Okay, what output we are supposed to get, number one. Number two is in case of supervised learning, we are having the training data set. So if we are having the training data set, then thing becomes easy for us. But here in unsupervised learning, we are not having any training data set. So ultimately, the algorithm itself, we need to make some kind of interpretation. We need to make this particular algorithm intelligent in terms of taking the decision and processing it, and ultimately it will segregate depending upon the class of that particular object, and train that particular model, that this model is selected model is fall under which category. Now this is very important nowadays. If you refer the literature, then irrespective of the application, lots of work has already been carried out, and still there is a scope available to do work in the reinforcement learning. So as you know, in case of supervised and unsupervised learning, we don't have the concept of agent and we don't have the concept of environment. So in case of reinforcement learning, what we have, let's say we have a raw data available. Okay, so this raw data, we can call it as a state and it fed into the agent. So agent, we can consider this agent is at what? We cannot directly consider it as a program. So this is fed and this agent is interacting with the environment. And depending upon that, there are two possibilities. So again, it fed into the system and environment itself trained, and at the start there is a slight deviation in the accuracy, but the once the model trained and over the 2 or 3 iteration, this model will give you the best result. And under this model, you can use the Q learning also, or multi-Q learning, or different variants of Q learning is also there, where you can use the reinforcement learning. Now, how can I say that this machine learning we can use as a security solution? So machine learning has already identified, because let's say, for example, if you want to identify one of the malicious code, or is there any bug available in your identified code. So this machine learning has already proved its efficacy in order to identify the malicious code in the application or in the software. Sometimes this machine learning can also be used in both the cases where the type of attack you want to, sometime the attack type is known and sometimes the attack type is not known. So this will identify the type of the attack is known, and where the type of attack is unknown. So both the cases it can deal simultaneously. So, but for known attacks, the machine learning can predict whether certain events are part of an attack by learning some kind of pattern from the attack examples. Let's say, for example, to face daily widespread attack, let's say like a distributed denial of service attack, where the services are not available to the to any of the user which is intended to get the services for any respective application. So this machine learning model are playing a crucial role there. How? Because they itself have been created and can predict this DDoS attack with 99.9% of accuracy. So already this much work has already been carried out with respect to, if you need to compare, you need to integrate the machine learning, and how, if you want to see that how this machine learning will be a viable solution to provide the security to your identified application. Now, I'm not discussing these. I'm just giving you the crux of so machine learning based security solutions for IoT. We can see the different kinds of attacks. Like if I consider the denial of service attack, where let's say one of the user is intended to work in this segmented area, but it is not feasible for the user to gain the access of your system. Despite of it, the user is having the right to access that particular system. So in this particular environment, the neural network or multivariate correlation analysis or Q learning plays an important role. Ultimately, the parameter that we need to take care here is the detection accuracy and the root mean error. So rest I'm not going to discuss. I'm going to shift more on the blockchain, how blockchain is going to be integrated in this particular area. So these are some kind of cyber attack detection using machine learning, like the threat detection and response. If you want to work in that particular area, you can detect a threat, and according to the nature of that particular threat, you can create the response using the machine learning algorithms. And sometimes the machine itself learn from the behavior of the user also. So you can use that particular environment also. So next one is deep learning. So deep learning algorithms also plays an important role in order to maintain the security. Directly, they are not going to play any role, but indirectly, if you say in order to prediction of that particular attack, in terms of prediction of any anomaly, in terms of prediction of any abrupt changes in the data, so directly they cannot play. But in such areas, finding out the abrupt behavior in the data, finding out some kind of anomaly in the existing system. So there you can apply these deep learning algorithms also. So let's say, for example, deep neural networks, DNN, which we can call it as a CNN, convolutional neural network, and recurrent neural network. So they are used for, let's say, if I take an example of deep neural network. So deep neural network you can use for the fraud detections. in order to identify the complex pattern in the finance. Some kind of, if you want to apply a kind of a fraud detection in the banking institutions, then people can go for the deep neural network based upon the anomaly detection. You can apply it in the manufacturing segment also. Convolutional neural networks are basically for processing of images we can use, and ultimately used for image healthcare segment, where we have a, or in the satellite area also, satellite images, or ISRO, DRDO, they are using this very frequently. Now moving further, so this is one of the virtual example where this slide will give you some kind of example where how deep learning based malware detection algorithm can be designed, where at the depending upon your pose, if you feed the pose as an input of the different individuals, then your model is going to be trained. Then according to that, you can identify if there is any abrupt changes in that particular model or not, or in that particular data or not. So according to the faces, you can also do it. Or if you want to use some kind of YOLO based model, object identification, then here if you can see street views, you have a high-end cameras available that are deployed in the street, and according to that you can identify that whether this particular environment, is there any kind of abrupt changes are there or not. So you can easily apply it. Okay, now moving further, so now up to this part we have discussed about some fundamentals of IoT and how IoT security related issues in the IoT, and then how machine learning and deep learning is a viable solution to maintain the security of security. Now I will in the couple of few slides, maybe in next 45 hours, okay, I'm going to discuss about the blockchain technology. Okay, now, I don't know how many of you are aware about this blockchain technology, but I will start from the scratch. Okay, let's say, for example, I'm just taking 1 minute break. So let's say, for example, if you consider a traditional way of document sharing. So what exactly the meaning of traditional way of document sharing? Let's say you have a Word document available with you, and you want to share that particular document with one of your friends. So the easiest way is what? Forget about the present. I'm talking about in terms of old days. You draft an email, make a kind of attachment, and send it to your friend. So, but in this particular environment, both the user cannot simultaneously update the document. So this is a traditional way of document sharing if we consider old days. Nowadays it's a kind of a kind of a traditional way of document sharing where both the user can simultaneously edit the document. We have a Google Docs available. Let's say your head of the department say, hey, I need the telephone number, mobile number, address, and the landline number of all the faculty members and staff in the computer science department. So a person will do one thing. He just prepare a kind of Excel sheet, share it with all the staff and faculty members, and within a fraction of second, or you can say whatever time is decided by the administrator, so all can fill the required information. But believe me, in this particular environment, why one problem is solved, that is both the user can simultaneously edit the document, but this particular environment is centralized or decentralized. So I believe that this particular environment is still centralized environment. So now the next question comes, does the centralized system harm? So there is a big question mark. Up to what context you want to say that this centralized system will harm? Now it's depend upon the application where you want to deploy this centralized system. And if I add certain more complexity to this particular environment, I say that if bandwidth is an issue, then you cannot forget about editing of the document. You are not in a position to upload or work on a shared document. Okay, so that means the bandwidth is an issue. If then you cannot upload or work on the shared document. So now what you need to do? So some of the slide I'm going to skip because centralized, decentralized, distributed environment I am not going to discuss, because centralized, in case of centralized, we are having a single point of contact. And in case of decentralized, as I have already told you in my previous discussion, instead of single point of contact, we are having multiple point of contact. So if we are having multiple point of contact, then thing becomes much more easy. Let's say I'm just taking example, because of some crash fault or network failure, I'm not in a position to get the data from this particular network, okay, from this particular segment of the network. Then no problem, I have the other part available, so my entire network connectivity never goes down, okay. So that is the beauty of the decentralized environment, and we can call it as a blockchain technology. Now coming to the distributed environment. So in case of distributed environment, everyone collectively execute their job. So there is no central controller at all. So let's say everyone is doing their job perfectly. It's a kind of a peer-to-peer manner. So like your intranet, internet, World Wide Web, and email, all these are working on the principle of distributed mechanism. Okay, now I'm coming to my previous question that if this is a centralized environment, so what could be the viable solution for document sharing? Still, I am not getting the answer of my query that what is the way out for this particular environment and what could be the viable solution for this particular environment. Now, the possible solution could be, let's say, for example, I make the internet itself responsible. I again repeat, I made the internet itself responsible in order to maintain the consistency of my network. If I made internet itself responsible to maintain the consistency of my network, then you know it very well that internet is an open channel. If internet is an open channel, then it open the door for the intruders. Hey, it gives a kind of a invitation to the intruder. Hey, you come to my network and perform some kind of malicious activity. Now it's up to your network that what up to what extent in your network you are having security features available or security solutions available. So if I make this internet itself responsible in order to maintain the consistency, so this is not a viable solution. This is not a viable solution. So what could be the viable solution? So still my problem of document sharing among two individuals is not solved still. Okay, we are moving from centralized system to, and if I say that the consistency is going to be maintained by the internet, then it is not going to be a worthy solution. Now the next possible solution is, if I say that I'm not going to replace the internet, I'm going to frame out a kind of a strong database, and that strong database we can call it as a decentralized database, and it itself is responsible to maintain the strong consistency among all the individuals those are available in the network. So this is nothing but this is the motivation of using the blockchain. Okay, so here everyone when collectively work out on their identified definition. Number one, everyone can see what is going on in the network, transparency. Number three, at the same time, all the user can simultaneously make any kind of intended task or editing, whatever is the right you have given to them. Okay, so this is the motivation of using the blockchain technology, because it's a kind of a decentralized database. So I again repeat, this technology is not going to replace the internet. Okay, this technology is not going to replace the centralized system. The centralized approach will remain as it is there. So sometime in the application environment, we have a two kind of request. One request is need a kind of a easy access, and one is a priority access. So for priority access, we have to use decentralized approach, and for easy access, or we can say normal access, we have to use centralized approach. So it's a top of the centralized approach. On the top, we are having the decentralized approach. Now moving further, so according to me, what is the exact definition of blockchain? So a blockchain is a kind of a decentralized computation and information sharing platform. Forget about what is written in the slide. I will tell you in a very simple way. Let's say there are four friends in your group, okay, or in your college. There are four friends. I'm just considering some roughly example. So these four friends, they want to start their own startup. They do not want to take part in the placement activity. They want to start their own startup, their own company. But the problem number one is they do not have trust on each other. Problem number two, if they do not have trust on each other, then what mechanism what mechanism is responsible in order to maintain the trust? So that means, but still the motivation is they want to start their own company, forget about the trust. But how can they forget about the trust if it is a kind of organization? There is some kind of monetary also available. So they need a kind of a technology who is responsible to maintain the trust. Okay, so now in this particular environment, if you take this, blockchain enables the multiple authoritative domains. For what purpose? Who do not have trust on each other, but still they want to cooperate, they want to coordinate, they want to collaborate. For what purpose? In order to make any kind of rational decision process, or they want to start their own startup. Okay, so we will see in couple of few slides how this blockchain is going to revolutionize the entire world or entire industry 4.0. So I will tell you by taking very simple example. The credit goes to the NPTEL because some of the PPTs I have taken from NPTEL, and due credit to the NPTEL. So now, if in a particular environment there are four person, let's say person X, person Y, person P, and person Z. Okay, and let's say one of person X want to and each an individual out of these four having $100 in their account. So everyone is having initially $100 in their account. Now, let's say, for example, person X want to transfer $50 from his account to person Y account. Okay, so now this is a kind of a transaction between X and Y. Now, if this is a kind of a transaction between X and Y, so why this entry is going to be reflected in the ledger maintained by person P and maintained by person Z? Why? Because it's a kind of a distributed database with strong consistency. So if it's a kind of a distributed database, so in blockchain technology, we are having a distributed ledger because that's the way it is called as distributed ledger technology. Okay, so in this particular environment, this entry is going to be reflected in the ledger maintained by each and every user. So now the beauty of that is later on the Y cannot deny that I have received $50 from X, because other person available in the network also have this kind of entry. Okay, now moving further, if I want to initiate another entry, let's say person Y want to transfer $30 from his account to person P account. This is a kind of a transaction between Y and P. Again, this entry is going to be reflected in the ledger maintained by each and every node. So Y to P 30, maintained by X, maintained by Z, in addition to Y and P. So this is a kind of a environment, and believe me, if I want to transfer, let's say 10,000 rupees from my account to Dr. Amit account, then for that particular purpose, I need what thing I should have a kind of a online account, or nowadays lots of opportunities are available. A scope is available to have UPI, Google Pay, Phone Pay, or Paytm. Lots of options are available. So now I am using a traditional. I want to transfer the amount from my account to Dr. Amit account. Then for that particular purpose, I need a third party. Although my account is on PNB and his account is also on PNB, okay, but still I need a payment gateway. So that means you need a kind of a payment gateway when you need to perform the real-time transactions of the money from your account to your friend account. So that means the successfulness of that particular transaction is solely dependent on the credibility of the third party. And who is the third party? Third party is the payment gateway. But here in blockchain technology, there is no requirement of the third party. It's a kind of an end-to-end transaction from one user to another user without the involvement of third party. This is the beauty of blockchain, that why the every segment of the industry, irrespective of manufacturing, chemical, or it's a kind of a drug delivery or any segment, forget about the what is going on in there, the segment or the area that have multiple stakeholders, and trust is a big problem. So they can definitely, every organization in nowadays shifting their business to the decentralized environment, and they develop their own decentralized environment using the help of the blockchain technologies. Okay, so now coming back to the PPT. So now again she want to transfer $80 from her account to person Z account, because she has already transferred $50. So now she is not entitled to complete this particular transaction because of insufficient fund. So same happen in case of whatever amount I am having, I am entitled to transfer that much amount only. Okay, so this is the beauty of blockchain, that how this blockchain is going to revolve. Now I will tell you some of the slide I am skipping because I want to devote more time on the use cases. So how the blockchain technology as a security solution we can use. So I'm just keeping some of the slides because I want to focus more on the implementation part. So now blockchain, how can we say that blockchain we can use as a security solution for the healthcare environment? Let's say, for example, you have the hospitals available, different sets of hospital, and in the hospital we have different stakeholders. We have the patient, we have the doctors, we have the paramedical staff, laboratories, and we have a kind of a research wing in the hospitals also. Okay, so now everyone is connected with a decentralized AI. Or why this artificial intelligence comes into the picture? Because at every aspects we need to take some kind of decisions, some kind of predictions. Okay, so that's the way we can call it as a decentralized AI, although it contains a kind of a distributed database also. Okay, now let's say how the symptoms or features are captured. We have a training model here. Okay, and we have a training data set, we have a testing data set. We have to apply for some early kind of detection. Why? Because these early kind of detection will help me in order to diagnose a particular patient more appropriately and more efficiently and in a timely manner. That will build up the reputation of the doctors, or a kind of a profit model also, if I take in a nutshell. So this is how the blockchain is going to revolutionize, because here we are using the blockchain. Once the data, all the data is available on the blockchain, all the multi-parties are available in your network, in the area of healthcare, clearly see what is going on in the network. There is no monopoly at all. Okay, now moving further. So first use case that I need to discuss with all of you is the use case, how this IoT is going to be used in the healthcare in order to secure the electronic healthcare record system. So let me just first fix up the foundation and tell you in a movie trailer form that what we did in this particular paper. Okay, and then I come back to in detailed discussion. So I will tell you in a 5 minute a kind of a movie trailer that what we did in this particular paper. So this will create a kind of interest among you. So first thing is this paper we have written. This was one of the paper published in journal JISA, Journal of Net Information Security and Application, with one of my MTech student Karan, and we took the help of Brunel University UK also. And I will tell you why we include Richard Evans in it and why we took the help of Brunel University. Because let's say in India we have the personal healthcare record system, PHR, that we can call it as a PHR. I will tell you a very simple example. Let's say I live in Ahmedabad, and because of whatever be the reason, I shifted my family and I relocate to Ghaziabad. So after relocating Ghaziabad and shifted to Ghaziabad, and after spending almost 1 month there, I now suddenly in one day I encountered one kind of problem related to my heart. Then I visited a physician, and there is a big question mark on the side of the database transfer. I will tell you what exactly I need to convey to you people. There is no record transferred from Ahmedabad to the doctor that is available to Ghaziabad. That means whenever you live in Ahmedabad, you have to visit the doctors of Ahmedabad. Whenever you are living to another country apart from Ahmedabad, then you have to visit, and doctor will start from the scratch depending upon your feedback. What feedback you have given to the doctor, according to that doctor can diagnose. So this kind of environment in India, we are living in the, or many countries are living in the personal healthcare record system. That means the doctor is giving the diagnosis depending upon the feedback given by the initially given by the patient itself, and then further diagnosis by the testing mechanisms. So there is a big question mark whether this kind of environment is flexible or this kind of environment is appropriate or not. In my point of view, this kind of environment very soon government of India is going to change it. Because if you consider an example of Europe, let's say you are living in Warsaw, capital of Poland. Okay, also whatever be the reason, if you visit Germany, let's say you are in Berlin, and you encounter one of the disease and you visited the hospital at Berlin, then they have a MRD number or they have the SSIN number. You just show in the reception, on the reception, your card, and by feeding this SSIN number in their system, the entire Europe is connected, okay, and it automatically fetch all the details since your childhood, all the details since your childhood, your diagnosis, how many doctors you have visited, how many cities you have visited with respect to your healthcare advice, or how many tests you have already encountered, and what are the reports of these tests. So that means since your childhood till date, doctor is having all kind of diagnoses with respect to your entire healthcare ecosystem. So that we can call it as the electronic healthcare ecosystem. Now, this is one aspect. Second aspect is maintaining the electronic healthcare record system for any nation is a big challenge. Why it is a big challenge? Because let's say I am a drug manufacturing organization, okay, and I get the access to the EHR data of entire Europe. I am just telling you one example, not quoting the name of any country. I'm just roughly saying that. Okay, now I am a drug manufacturing organization employee or the owner, and I get the access of the electronic healthcare record of entire Europe. Okay, then it's a huge data, and by using some analytic tool, I will predict that over a period of next 5 year, over a period of next 10 year or next 20 year, this particular disease will increase. So according to that, I will start the manufacturing of the medicines, okay, and start the R&D of the related to that particular disease. And once this disease is in the boom, then I have the medicine available. So it's a kind of a win-win situation for the manufacturing organization. Okay, so this is the motivation for writing this particular paper. Now I will tell you why we took the help of the Richard Ivan, because in India we don't get the access of EHR data. So in rural university they have the hospitals available, so they easily get the access to EHR data. So we took the help of Brunel University in order to execute this particular task. Now I think the trailer is clear to all of you why we took why we have written this particular paper. So now I will tell you the entire objective of this work is to develop an electronic healthcare record system which will enable the user or the healthcare professional to access their personal health related data in an auditable manner. What exactly the meaning of auditable manner? At any instant of time, they can see that what is going on in the network, who is going to access my data, at what time, at what time stamp, whether they leak that particular data or not. All things are available here. Okay. Now, moving further, so this is the entire architecture that Karan has, my MTech pass out student, has made. So we have the patient and he captured the patient because we get the access to the EHR data. So depending upon that, he need to frame out the system architecture. And after that, the simulation for the performance simulation, he used the Hyperledger Fabric because it's a kind of a permission consortium blockchain. And Hyperledger Composer he used for what purpose? In order to frame out the smart contract by using Fabric network, because smart contracts are highly required when you have a multi-party environment. And once you have a multi-party environment, then you have to resolve the conflict. It's a kind of a MOU, a kind of a piece of code written between multiple users, or we can say multiple stakeholders, which can be called off later in case of any problem. Now, next we have used the Docker container. Why we have used Docker container? It's a kind of a operating system level virtualization. For operating system virtualization, we have used the Docker container. And for production of development of decentralized application, we have used IBM blockchain platform. So the first thing is for that particular purpose, because data is heterogeneous in nature. So we need to take care what we need to take care. We need to frame out the structure of that particular data. Okay, so for that particular purpose, we need to frame out the entire stakeholders. How many stakeholders? So we took 3 stakeholders here: patient, clinician, and medical record. So we need to fix up the field. So let's say patient ID, and the data type for that is string, like for the clinician ID and record. So he framed out the data structure for all the stakeholders. Then after that, once you have framed out, then we need the access control list. for what purpose we need the access control list? In order to give the, because it's a multi-party environment, you need to frame out a kind of a privileges you need to give. So then we have framed out the access control list where admin can access the entire resources. The patient can have the access to the EHR of their own, and the clinician lab staff will have the access to the data only in the read mode, write permission on the EHR, new EHR data. Then we have framed out the smart contract. So it's a piece of code, and smart contract we have framed out. I have already told you. So first one is how to create the medical record. What way we have to use to create the medical record. For that, we need to frame out a smart contract. We have written a particular code for that. I will tell you the small fragment of that particular code, and how to grant the access to a new patient, and how to grant the access to the lab technician, how to, once you have granted an access to a particular person, then how to revoke that particular access. And these are different functionalities associated with the smart contract. So now he has done two things. One is in this particular paper we did, one is the application environment. We have developed the entire application UI interface. And second one is we have deployed it, and we took the data of Brunel University Hospital Center, and then try to see that up to how much extent we have provided the flexibility or maintain the security and privacy. That I will tell you once I summarize it. So the dashboard we have designed for the clinician. So this is the code to design the dashboard of the clinician. So that will understand your viewpoint because being a faculty member, sometimes we struck at this particular thing, that what definition we need to give to our BTech students or MTech students, sometimes to our PG student in terms of the implementation, because UG students are more inclined for the development, and MTech are more inclined to do some kind of research, writing the papers. So that will clear your understanding how you can pick up your problem and convert it into a kind of a narrow down problem. Okay. Now this is the code how to create a new clinician. So we have created a new clinician. So now this is the dashboard of the patient. Okay, so this is the patient ID. And remember why I have highlighted it, because this is the way how patient is not known by the name. Patient is known by the random number, and in the blockchain it is known by the hash key generated random hash generated mechanisms we are supposed to use. So basic cryptographic primitives we have to use in order to maintain the privacy, because if the user do not want to, or the patient do not want to disclose his or her identity, then is there any flexibility available? So in order to achieve it, we have used this particular mechanism. Now this is the code how to create a new patient. We have created a new patient. Then we have how the dashboard of the medical record look like. So this is the medical record identifier. So everything is known by its number, not known by the person. So this is the code how to create a medical record. I will do one thing. I will hand over these PPT to the organizer, so that because it's a wasting of time to discuss the entire code, I will hand over these PPTs to the organizer. They will share it with you, so that, or otherwise, if you want to refer more, you can refer the repository available on GitHub and this particular paper also. So let's say if you want to, for doctor or paramedical staff, if they want to submit a new diagnosis testing report of a particular patient. So for that particular purpose, this is the dashboard. If you want to submit a particular transaction. So in a nutshell, whatever I have told to you, all things comes in a single window, and that single window we can call it as a immutable ledger, or we can call it as a distributed ledger, where the timestamp is available, who has made the entry, and what are the different participants. So data ownership, we need to define what is the transaction type and what is the timestamp. So this is a kind of a ledger where all the entries are going to be reflected. It's a single page entry. You have the multiple pages. Sorry. Now moving further. So this is the detail of the records. How the records are going to be stored, and this is the dashboard for the admin, where the peers users identify the name. So if you want to refer more, please refer this particular paper. You will get the entire idea. So now this is about the first case study. The second case study, we have used in this particular case study, we have used the blockchain as well as some of the flavor of the IoT. Okay. So a use case on check clearance system, we have solved this particular problem using blockchain. So we have developed a new framework, and that paper was published in Future Generation Computer System. And that is a proprietary for us, a Mudra chain that we have developed. It's a kind of a framework which will replace the normal process of check clearance system. I will tell you that how it is going to be work, and how it is going to be taken care, and where we have deployed it and tested it in a friendly environment. Okay. So now I will tell you some trailer, 5-minute trailer or trailer for this particular problem that we have solved. So let's say, for example, in a normal banking environment, let's say I live in Ahmedabad. My account is in Punjab National Bank, Ahmedabad. Okay, although it's a CBS branches nowadays, but sometime clearance of check will take time. Let's say I have submitted one check in Meerut. So normally it will take 2 to 3 days. Normally, sometime it take more time. So and this is one aspect. Aspect number 2 is, this is one aspect related to the delay. Second aspect is, let's say someone has in this process, someone has make a kind of a forgery on your check and make a kind of a tools, and using some tools they capture your signature and create a kind of a forgery on your check. Number 2. Number 3, if this is the case, then who is going to monitor it? Who is going to be the regulatory authority? And as a user, it is your responsibility, and it is the responsibility of the financial institution to give you the freedom that this entire check movement system, once you have deposited a check, up to what extent your check will be transferred to second party, third party, fourth party, until the last clearance desk, you will see the entire phase. But the bank is not giving you this kind of flexibility. So these are certain motivations of doing the work in this particular identified definition. Okay. Now I will tell you how we proceed in this particular definition. Again, this work carried out by my BTech pass out student Naman Kabra. Right now he is doing MS from UK. Okay, Stanford University. Now, let's say financial institutions, I have already told you, shifted towards the digital wallets and payment, and trade becomes a critical factor. So the existing check truncation system that we can in abbreviate CTS uses the magnetic ink character recognition, that we can call it as a MICR, to scan the check and send to the clearing houses. So normally your check is scanned by using the MICR. Okay. But believe me, MICR system is mainly focuses on watermarks, okay, and UV lights and other microscopic features to scan your check. But what happens? The first problem that I'm going to encounter related to as a motivation for doing the work, or related to this particular segment, first is related to the wrong payment. Let's say your check truncation system has limited functionalities. It checks only the grayscale image of the check, which reduces the visibility of MICR features. So features can be duplicated, because if you just Google it, feature duplication tools, so you will find number of tools are available from which, using these tools, you can do a kind of a photo editing and placed a kind of a forged check. You can create a kind of a forged check and place it on behalf of the user. Okay, then it leads to a wrong payment by the bank to the malicious user. Then how to stop it? Because user is not aware about it, because user is not the part of the check clearance mechanism or different phases of check clearance mechanism. Because once you have deposited your check, and until the credited of your or debited of your check, you are not knowing the different steps between these what are the different steps between these. Okay, so now this is motivation number 1. Now problem number 2 is security frauds, because there is a possibility possible security frauds with the traditional check truncation system, because duplication of check images, invisible ink usage, and visibility issues in beneficiary name, sometimes visibility issues with the amount on check. Okay, so now the third problem is the delay, because normally the check are manually sent via postal system to CTS branches, and in one major city there is one branch responsible for which we can call it as a clearance house, which is responsible to clear all the checks. So this may sometimes leads to the loss of physical instrument also, and delay is a primary factor, but sometimes in a worst case it may lose the physical instrument. That physical instrument we can call it as a check, the copy of your check. So this is the another problem faced by the centralized system. Now, all these limitations of the traditional check clearance system can be solved by using the blockchain technology. Now, I will tell you how. Because first, the blockchain technology is going to integrate. We are going to adopt this sorry blockchain technology in the check clearance process. So once it is adopted in the check clearance system, then as a beneficiary, you also able to see what is going on in the network, and your check is passes from which different stages. Number one. Number two, because blockchain is a distributed or immutable technology, so once the transaction you have made, any user don't have any right to duplicate that particular transaction. If you want to make some kind of alteration, you have to initiate a new transaction. So if everyone in the network know what is going on in the network, then it leads to transparency in your system. And another one is it increases the efficiency of the check clearing, and ultimately the time limit of the check clearing also. So blockchain enabled check, here check is embedded with a quick response code that we can call it as a QR code. And here we use the consortium mode, or we have operated all the user in the consortium mode. Why? Because solely individual bank is not responsible for that. The bank has to frame out a kind of a multiple banks are coming together. Okay, so that's the way you have to use here the consortium mode. So this QR code is embedded in your check. Okay, and QR code is encrypted and is generated, and which is to be encrypted using the private key K of the user. So these wallets operate in consortium mode. So for that particular purpose, we have used the practical Byzantine fault tolerance consensus protocol here. Okay, and what I want to convey to you. So this is the entire system, how this entire architecture looks like. So if you want to refer more about it, then I advise you please refer this particular paper, and you will get the clear-cut idea that how this a small type of problem can be we can apply it and solve it as a prototype. And if we get a kind of a funding from the government, then definitely we can come up with and apply it in a friendly environment with a friendly set of customers. Okay, so this is next part and the last part of my presentation, some of our contribution in the area of blockchain, machine learning, deep learning, and AI with our PG, UG, and PhD students. So I advise all of you please refer our papers and criticize our papers also, and giving you, because criticizing is also very important in the research, because sometimes when the people criticize your work, then only you came to know that whatever work you have carried out, this particular there is some kind of scope available to improve, and this scope will motivate you to write another paper related to whatever difficulties faced by some kind of audience related to your work. So this paper, all are very recent paper of 2020. In this particular paper, we have applied the blockchain to find out the adoption in the autonomous vehicle. This is the how the blockchain and AI are going to be married together, or we can say the integration of blockchain and AI. And if we consider the energy cloud management as a application, so this is how the blockchain is going to be revolutionize the industry 4.0, and the adoption of blockchain in various parameters. So these are some of the papers. So I advise, this is blockchain-based deep learning as a service in healthcare 4.0. This paper was published in IEEE Transactional Network and Science and Engineering. So refer these papers. This will clear your understanding. And in case you have any doubt related to these papers, then definitely come reach to us. We will provide you some kind of codes, some kind of suggestions. Okay. So last point that I want to say before I conclude and take the question answer. So what is the difference between smart and intelligent? So the difference between the smart man and wise man. In a mathematical term, if I say that if I want to plot a graph where the x-axis represent the situations and y-axis represent the outcome. So the graph of a wise person would have a high peak and the graph of a smart person would have high peak. So that means in research we need a high peak, not overall high peak. We need a high peak. So keep doing good work. So last word that I want to share with all of you. If anything I have said seems useful to you, I am happy. If not, don't worry. Just forget all about it. This was said by Honorable Dalai Lama, a very favorite quote of mine. And in slightly in my context, I have changed it. If anything I have said seems useful to you, I am happy. If not, don't worry. Soon all become necessity for all of us because of the rapid change in the technology in the present era. So we cannot sit silently. At least we know the nut and bolts of each and every technology, and we have to work all together with our students and giving and motivate them to do good work. Okay, so this is end from my side. Now I hand over the mic, or I can say hand over the this entire platform to the organizer. If they have any kind of questions, then we will take the question in next 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, participants, if you want to ask any question, then you can ask. Okay, Sudeep sir,
Yes,
we
yes,
will
sir.
send, sir, we will send the questions in your mail.
Yeah, please.
Okay, sir. And thank you, Professor Sudeep Tanwar sir, for your valuable session. We learned a lot under the concept of role of machine learning in IoT-based security solution. We also learn about the deep learning, blockchain technology, and many more. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all of you, and thanks to the audience for patiently listening me. Okay, thank you,
Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you.
Participant, you are requested to fill the feedback form using the using the link pasted in the chat box. Okay, now you can leave. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.